Lately, I've been getting a lot of questions about coloring beards. I mean, I've never actually colored mine, but I guess that's kind of obvious. I have thought about it. I think a lot of guys do, and they're worried that maybe some guy somewhere is going to judge them and go, well, why you trim your beard? Why do you color your beard? Why are you getting all high maintenance? Who cares, man? Let people live their life the way they want to. Somebody wants to color their beard, I want to show them how to do it. And I want you guys to have as much information as possible so you can make a right choice about which products and techniques are going to be right for you. Let's get at it. My name is Matty Conrad. I've been a barber for 27 years, founded a number of barbershops, and started a brand called Victory Barber and Brand. I spend most of my time now traveling around the world teaching other barbers all of my tips and tricks on how to be a better barber. Now, I've been featured in a ton of magazines, but most recently, you've probably seen me on GQ's grooming videos. Okay, a lot of you have seen that. And that inspired me to start my own YouTube channel to help you guys with some of my best tips and tricks. So here they are. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, we're gonna talk about something that a lot of guys do in secret, or a lot of guys have thought about doing, but are maybe a little bit afraid to. Coloring your beard. Now, I've never colored my beard before. I think there's some sort of macho guy thing involved in that, and coloring my beard just feels a little too high maintenance for me. But I've definitely thought about it. I spent a number of years working as an educator for a company that made hair color. So I have a little bit of insight into this, and I want to be able to share some of that expertise with you guys. So I'm going to explain how hair color works and the general biology around structure and color so that you have as much information as possible and can make the best decision when it comes to picking a product that is going to help you achieve your desired results. If you haven't been able to tell by now, I'm a huge nerd for this sort of thing. So let's get into the nerdy stuff. Hair structure is actually kind of interesting. It's not just a single filament. If you look at a hair under a strong enough microscope, you'll see that a hair is actually 3 layers. There's the medulla, which is the skinny inner kind of backbone layer of the hair. There's the fibrous cortex, which is the large voluminous center area of the hair, and it gives it a lot of its strength and rigidity. And then there's the outer scaly layer, which is called the cuticle, and it's kind of the protective sheath of the hair. Can we just talk for a second about how gross it is when you zoom in on something that is really small, making it really big? They just always look disgusting. I mean, look at this thing. That's a mite. I mean, that's gonna haunt my dreams forever. Gross. Anyway, let's get back to hair. This is a hair that's been cut on the left with a razor, and the hair on the right was cut with an electric razor. You can see massive difference. But for the purposes of this photo, I just want to show you this part. This is the cortex, and this is where color lives. Your hair color is actually created by 2 different types of melanin. One is called pheomelanin, and it's red and yellow. The other is called eumelanin, and it's black and brown and often more of a cooler tone. The ratio of these 2 types of melanin that you have are what determines your hair color. The density of melanin is what determines how light or dark your hair is. Lightness is on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the darkest and 10 being the lightest. So if you have very dark hair, you have a high concentration of pheomelanin and a high concentration of eumelanin. If you have very light hair, you likely only have a slight concentration of eumelanin and very little, if any, pheomelanin. It seems pretty straightforward so far. If you have dark hair, you have a lot of melanin, and if you have blonde hair, you only have a little melanin. But what happens to gray hair? Well, melanin is produced by a structure called a melanocyte. These have a lifespan, which, as far as we can tell, is genetically determined. And once they stop working, they no longer produce melanin. Now, the hair continues to grow without any. So gray hair is not a different color at all. It's actually created by the absence of melanin. Now, the hair structure stays more or less the same, just without melanin. Now, the reason we get a salt and pepper effect is because the melanocytes don't stop working all at one time. They sort of taper off, and if you're lucky enough, this will happen dispersed throughout your hair fairly evenly. You'll start to get that kind of silver fox look. But some guys get it happening very locally, which means that you're getting patches. When it comes to coloring your hair, each of these situations requires different types of products to make it still look natural. When you go to the drugstore and walk down the aisle, you're going to be greeted by a number of choices. Some of them say words like blending or coverage or gray reducing. Some of them look like they're for hair, and some of them say mustache and beard. So let's explain and break down the two color types so you can understand what's happening. The two main types of hair color are classified as semi-permanent and permanent. A semi-permanent color uses pre-oxidized pigments to coat the outside of the hair shaft and attaches to the cuticle layer, kind of like a stain. This will slowly lighten out over time, and it will give just a slightly darker look to gray hair. This type of color is what they refer to when they say the word blending. So if you have a blended gray and that nice salt and pepper look and just want to make it a tiny bit darker, this is your best option. Permanent color works by mixing ammonia or some derivative with pre-oxidized pigments, which is then mixed with an activator oxygenator. It penetrates into the hair shaft, so through the cuticle layer, goes into the cortex, and either neutralizes or replaces natural melanin with artificial pigments. This is what they refer to as coverage. It will give a much darker result dependent on the color selection. The results are permanent. Even though it may soften up slightly, it is going to stay that color until you either cut it off or try and remove it with other much nastier chemicals. So essentially, the semi-permanent or blending color is only going to sit on the outside of the hair shaft. Because it's very slightly translucent, it's not going to achieve the same amount of coverage as you would get from a permanent or coverage color that is going to penetrate directly into the hair's cortex and replace all the natural melanin with the artificial pigment. I know. So much science today. I'm sorry, but it's important. The thing about coloring gray hair is that it's resistant. Now, resistant means that it has a hard time taking on color. So if you're using a semi-permanent color, you're going to get a slightly darker overall appearance and more of a blend. But if you're using a permanent color, you're going to have a stronger action and a heavier pigment load, which means you're going to get more coverage. The reason they make colors specifically for beards and mustaches is because they're actually a different type of hair. The hair that grows from your head is called terminal hair, and it's been growing since birth. It's usually a little softer and more fine, but the hair that grows from your face is called androgenic hair, and it doesn't start growing until puberty, and it's often more coarse and resilient, which requires a stronger action from the color. So beard and mustache specific color is formulated to be that. So why is it that sometimes when we color beards, we end up with color results that we didn't expect? Sometimes it's a little bit green looking, sometimes it's orange. You're always gonna get that one guy though that says, oh, I colored my beard one time and it turned orange. Now let's look at why this happens. This is only something that is gonna be the result of a permanent hair color, when the results are a little warmer or more of an orange tone than you'd hope they would. This has to do with something called underlying pigment. Underlying pigment is just pheomelanin that's trapped deep within the cortex and becomes exposed when the outer layer of eumelanin is removed by the hair color, leaving it with kind of an orangey tone. This happens a lot to guys when they try and bleach their hair. The eumelanin is really easy to get off because it sits on the outer side of the cortex, so the bleach just chews right through it. But the pheomelanin is harder to remove, so instead of getting something that is kind of bright blonde, you get something that is not quite yellow and not quite orange. It's more blorange. How we deal with that orangey tone has a lot to do with color theory. And for this one, I'm gonna need some crayons. I didn't have any crayons at home, so here I am back out in the snow walking to the store to get you guys some crayons so I can teach you some color theory. This is how much I like you guys. No big deal, just a grown-ass man looking for crayons. Okay, I'm back, and I've got a pack of crayons, and we're gonna work with only the most basic colors. So I don't need the brown one or the black one. In hair color, we have a thing called the color wheel, and all the colors of the rainbow are spread out around it. And the colors that are diametrically opposed to each other often cancel each other out. They are complementary colors, so something like red and green, or purple and yellow, or blue and orange. Those things, when you mix them together, make a neutral brown tone. Let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna take my yellow crayon, and I'm just gonna color a line with just yellow. Then I'm gonna take my purple or violet crayon, and I'm gonna color a line next to it. If I mix the two together, I'm gonna get something that looks a lot more brown. This is what we call neutralization, and it works for orange. You mix it with blue, and it works for red if you mix it with green.
It's important to note that all the colors on the left are actual natural occurring pigments that we would find in the hair: yellow, orange, and red. Yellow is going to be found in kind of a medium toned hair, orange is going to be found in dark brown hair, and black hair is actually going to have red undertones. So these are the colors on the right that we use to control those tones and neutralize them, making them appear less orange.
So here you can see how the level of neutralization works. If you have very light colored hair, chances are you have a very light yellowish pheomelanin. But if you have really dark colored hair, your pheomelanin gets increasingly stronger and is more on the red side. So if you have very dark hair, what you require to control that is a very ashy color, which would be either blue or green. So that's why sometimes when you apply color to very light colored hair and you're trying to control a darker colored hair, it'll turn kind of a greenish tint. But if you don't have sufficient control tones, your result is going to be orangey and warm.
If you ever get confused about what kind of control tones you have in your product, you can actually just look on the top of the box there. You can see for the medium, it's just a blue color, but for the darker brown, it is more of a green color. And that means there's going to be those kind of control tones in the product. Pro tip.
Jesus, there's a lot of science today, huh? Get on with it already. All right, guys, that's enough science and craft time. I'm gonna get into actual application now. I'm gonna go change into a black t-shirt so I don't get spots and stains all over myself. But while I'm on my way there, do me a favor, hit like and subscribe, and make sure you leave your comments below.
There's one thing I need you to know before you just go to the drugstore, buy some chemicals, and slap it on your face. It's not totally uncommon for people to be a little bit allergic to this stuff. And so, if you've never used color before, do what's called a patch test. Just take a little bit of it, apply it to the inside of your elbow or somewhere where the skin is kind of thinner, and leave it on there for about 5 to 10 minutes. If you don't have any kind of adverse reaction, you're probably good to go. But if you don't do that, you're gonna look like this guy. Yuck.
There you go. So I changed into a black t-shirt. I really want to make sure that I don't have anything dripping down and ruining whatever shirt that I'm wearing. And it's also a really good idea to have a dark colored towel. Dark colored towel, don't use your nice white towels. Color will stain towels, it will stain countertops, it will stain anything that it gets on. So you really want to make sure that you're careful and use something that is dark so that you're not going to end up having a bunch of stained stuff after you're done. For those of you that like to use styling products or beard oil, you want to make sure you get all that stuff off before you color your beard. You want a really nice clean canvas to make sure that there's nothing impeding that product from getting inside the hair. So I'm going to start by washing my beard.
As usual, I'm gonna wash my beard with the Victory Barber and Brand wash. It is my favorite beard wash. It makes it feel soft, it smells great, and I'm gonna leave it in there for about 60 seconds to make sure I get all of the benefits of the product.
Okay, I'm just gonna comb the beard out a little bit and I'm gonna get it dry. Now, most permanent color, you're gonna have a better time applying it dry. A semi-permanent color, you're actually gonna have an easier time applying when the hair is slightly damp. Because I'm using permanent color first to kind of get up all these little guys, I'm gonna dry my hair. So for that, I'm just gonna take my Dyson. Okay, so what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna take color base. Now the color base is the tube that has actually the pigments and all of the chemical in there that's actually gonna get into the hair. So I'm gonna take that first and I'm gonna open that up and I'm just gonna squeeze the contents of that into my bowl. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add the activator, which is what we call the color developer or the oxidant. Remember, this is what's gonna pump all the oxygen into that and it's gonna help those pigments swell. So I'm gonna add equal amount of cream developer to my pigment. Now, before I actually start applying anything or mixing it up, I'm going to put on gloves. Hair and skin and nails are made up of surprisingly similar things. So if it will stain or dye your hair, it will do the same to your fingernails and to your hands. So I'm gonna make sure I got gloves on. Then I'm gonna take my brush. Now, this is a color applicator brush. This is something that I have at my shop when we're doing any kind of hair color. And so I'm gonna use this. And I'm just gonna mix it together in the bowl until it's really thoroughly mixed. You wanna make sure that it's consistent and creamy, and you want it to be a really solid color. You don't want it to look marbleized or clumpy or anything like that. If it's clumpy, there might be a problem with the product, so make sure you don't do that. It should be a very smooth, creamy consistency, just like this. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna really focus on these areas here. I'm gonna focus on the areas where there's a little bit more concentration of more like a patchy gray. And I'm just gonna apply the color a little bit where that is. I'm not gonna paint right down to the skin. I'm not gonna really press in hard. I'm just gonna really lightly go over it and apply it just to the hair in the areas where it's starting to look a little bit kind of salty. And I wanna make sure I don't just get the outer layer of the hair. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start kind of separating the beard out a little bit using the kind of the point on my comb. And I can pull it to the side like that, and then I can just apply a little more where I feel like I need it. Just in this area here, you can see it adheres to the hair quite well. It gets in there and really sticks to the hair and starts kind of activating as soon as we do that. So I'm gonna just keep working through here and applying my product where I need it. Using a brush like this really helps you be a little bit more specific about where you want to put that hair color. You don't have to mash it into your face and then scrape it all over. That's going to be step 2. This is just trying to cover up the really persistent gray. And so I'm going to pull back here. You can see I've got a little patch right back in this area here. So I'm just going to try and get that as well. Make sure that that is not left uncovered. Now you really want to try and keep this off your skin as much as possible, especially if you're just doing a technique like this. As soon as it hits your skin, you're going to get a bit of a patch, and I'm going to show you how we can avoid that with our semi-permanent color. All right, I just want to inspect a little closer here, make sure I don't have any bits that I have missed, like right up in here, and then even through my mustache. It's just a couple. Now this stuff does smell pretty strong, so be careful when you're working under your nose. You don't want to knock yourself out with the ammonia smell. You can see I've got like just in the areas where there was a little bit more gray than usual. That's the only areas where we put the product. The manufacturer recommends 5 minutes for this, which means 5 minutes from now, I'm gonna rinse it off. It's not 5 minutes from when I started, it's 5 minutes from the last application that I put on. So I'm just gonna leave this for 5 minutes, and then we're gonna rinse it off, and we're gonna go to step 2. All right, so we're back here. You can see after 5 minutes, it's starting to get a little darker. And so now is the time they recommend to take it out. So I'm gonna give this a quick wash again. I'm gonna make sure I use a shampoo to remove the chemicals that's on the beard. You wanna make sure that you actually remove that all the way, give it a really thorough rinse, and then we're gonna shampoo. So here we go. Now I can already see that it's quite a lot darker. You can see it's got so much less gray in there. See how it did when we get it dry. Now you can see that even just with the light application that I gave it, it got a lot of good coverage. It really looks a lot darker. Not a lot that missed there. So this is a really good idea for people that just want to dial it down a little bit and give it just a tiny bit more of a youthful look. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over it with a semi-permanent color, which is just going to make everything look a tiny bit more uniform. If I just started with a semi-permanent color, it wouldn't really get the coverage. You'd still see a lot of the grays poking through. So because I've already given it this little bit of a layer of coverage where the gray areas are, now I can go over everything else and make it look a lot fresher. One of the steps that most guys overlook that I highly suggest is start by trimming your outline first. So do your outline on your beard before you color your beard. Largely because when color gets on the skin, it's gonna create a slight stain. And if you trim it afterwards, you're gonna be trimming through kind of a stained skin area. A lot of guys have these like hairs that grow up in this area here. Some it's very dense, some it's just very sparse. But you don't want to apply color to this area, because as soon as you trim that out, it takes a day or two for that color stain to slowly kind of fade off of your skin, and then it's really, really obvious that you've just been coloring your beard. So the thing that I suggest doing is starting by trimming your beard. I'm gonna use my saber from Stylecraft, and I'm just gonna trim the top line of my beard and make sure I get it kind of where I like it to sit so that I can use that as a guideline for where I should start my color. So I'm just gonna take my cheek here, pop that up, create a straight line between the corner of my mouth and my sideburn. And I get all those hairs up my cheek. There we go. Now I've got a nice strong line that I can use to kind of guide my color work. All right, that's gonna be much better. Now I'm not gonna get stains on my cheeks. Here's a quick pro tip for you guys that have hair that grows like up into this area. After you've set your line, just take a really small strip of Vaseline. Take a tiny little bit and just grab some and just work it along the skin, just right along that skin line there, making sure that you leave like a little barrier there. This is what we call like a barrier cream. I mean, you can actually get barrier cream, but Vaseline works great. And what it'll mean is that the color won't penetrate through and stick to the skin, so you're not gonna get all blotchy and messy. It'll keep a cleaner outline. There you go. So I'm gonna use my semi-permanent color now. And a lot of the time, this is just like one straightforward color. You don't need to mix two things together. Sometimes you do with like a very subtle or a soft developer. But for this one, it's just a direct application. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna pour this right into the bowl. I actually need to take the foil off. These are always the worst things to try and do with gloves on. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna get this directly into the bowl, then I'm just gonna apply it with a brush. So once I get that into the bowl, you can see that it comes out as a nice creamy color. And I'm gonna use my brush to apply it. Now, while my brush is clean, that's when I'm gonna start on my top line. So I'm just gonna take a small amount on the tip of the brush, just like this, and I'm just gonna start at the top line, right where it needs to go, and I'm gonna apply it directly to the beard. That way, you don't have gobs of color on it, everything it's so much easier when you have a clean brush to just apply it right at the top first in the areas where you don't want it to overlap a lot. Start there, and I'll start the other side. There we go. Now I'm gonna have a nice clean line there, and I don't have to worry about overlapping. Now I can go into the rest of the beard. I just want to take my mustache. Go. You can see starting to get a little bit more coverage there. And then I'm going to start applying it throughout the rest of the beard. Now I want to make sure I don't just coat the outside of the beard, I want to get on the inside of the beard, so I can always just get in there with my hands and separate it a bit into smaller chunks, so I'm not just trying to force color through this dense mat of hair. And just make sure I get all through the insides, not just the outside. So I'm just gonna make sure I get all of that covered.
So when you're doing your application, you really do just want to go up to this area here where your sideburns start to transition into your beard hair. You don't want to keep going all the way up. Somewhere around the middle of the ear is usually where the sideburn hair transitions. Another really good way to make sure you've thoroughly applied all of your product is to go through it with a comb. Just comb it through the beard. It'll really help to spread all of the color through the beard and make sure it's nice and even. So I'm going to take a wet cloth and just clean up the edges, make sure that I don't have any product sitting on my skin, somewhere where it's going to be really noticeable. And then we're just going to let that sit for 5 minutes. So far, it's been pretty easy. Okay, that's been 5 minutes, and you can see it started to darken up just a little bit, which is great. It's time for me to remove it. Now, you don't need to shampoo semi-permanent color. You don't need to remove it with shampoo. In fact, it's a bad idea. You want to shampoo out permanent color because there's a lot of chemical in it, and you really do need to remove it from your hair and skin. But when it comes to semi-permanent color, you don't want to shampoo it. You just want to give it a really good rinse. So I'm going to hop in the shower and take this off really quick, and we'll be right back. The hardest part is getting your shirt off over your hair color. So might need to get something with bigger neck. All right, I think we got it. Oh yeah, look how much darker that is now. Okay, I'm gonna throw a t-shirt on and blow dry it and get it looking a little more cleaned up. So now the only thing to do really is just trim up the interior of the beard. I'm gonna use the Brio Beardscape V2, which they sent me about a year ago and I actually really like. I like it as a clipper, but not as a trimmer. I know there's a lot of confusion between those two things, and I'm actually gonna make a video explaining what the difference is between the two. But I've just been working away, trying to clean up some of the interior here using a freehand technique and just getting all of the flyaways, especially through the side walls here that tend to make the beard look a little wider. I really like having a fuller beard in the wintertime, so I'm not taking very much off. I'm really just getting rid of some of the little flyaways and some of the stuff that's sticking out. I like my beard to be a little fuller and a little bushier in the wintertime. Once I'm done that, I'm gonna go over it here and do the outline with my Stylecraft Saber, which is a new trimmer that I just got and I really like. These guys sent this one to me to try out and it gives really nice clean lines, as you can see from what we did up top there. You can see I got a little bit to clean up right there. So I'm just gonna get that and then I'm gonna outline the rest of my beard just to make it look a little stronger, make sure it's clean on the neck so it really pops. But so far you can see, I mean, there's a little bit of like a salt and peppery feel to it at the bottom there, but it looks much, much darker overall. I actually really like it. There we go, that line is much, much cleaner. You can see how easy it is to make a really nice clean line with this. I'm gonna go to the back, my back line. Great, now I'm just gonna go through my baseline here. Working with a good trimmer makes this so easy. Those of you that saw my last video know that I did an entire haircut using the worst tools that I could find, the cheapest tools at the drugstore. And it's really, really hard to get a clean line, something that looks really nice and polished with that. In fact, the trimmer could barely function at all. But this one, working with a really good professional trimmer, just makes everything so much easier. It's such a joy to trim your beard using a really good tool because the lines look crisper, sharper, and they're a lot easier to get them there. So I just make sure that everything is polished off here, get my back line. All right, that's looking much better.
Well, there it is, you guys, all done. My first time ever coloring my beard, and I think it turned out pretty good. So you can see here the before and after, I was looking a little more ashy, a little more gray. And honestly, I feel like it just made me look tired. And I like this. I think this looks a lot better. I don't feel too bad about it. And if you're one of those guys that's thinking about coloring his beard, why not? Give it a try. Certainly don't feel any pressure to do it. A little salt and pepper never hurt anybody. Some guys look fantastic like that. Thank you so much for following along on YouTube. Thanks for all the clicks and the likes and subscribes. Make sure if you haven't done that yet, mash that button below. Help me beat the algorithm. I'll keep making more videos for you guys. And if you have any videos that you want to see or anything that you're really struggling with when it comes to your grooming, leave it in the comments below and I will do my very best to answer it. Until then, good luck and good grooming.